And my guest this morning, calling all the way from the state where everything is large. They do everything big in the state that Nicole resides in. And she's in one of the largest, if not the largest city in that state, Houston. So Nicole Scott. Nicole is a native Houstonian who has a passion for all things educational. She enjoys participating in literacy initiatives and language acquisition efforts for non-English speakers. Nicole has dedicated 20 years to private industry and 10 years as an educator within her home community. Nicole obtained a BA from the University of Houston and an M.Ed from the Lamar University. Her interests include traveling, dancing, listening to music, and adding to her collection of crosses. She is the proud mother of a 12-year-old son. Just reading that bio, Nicole and I have a lot in common, and we'll talk about that over the next hour or so. The Frog Chronicles paints a metaphorical picture of Nicole Scott's seemingly endless journey to meet her prince, while somehow encountering a number of frogs. All right now, Nicole takes you on a very transparent journey through the darkness of her past that stemmed from years of gut-wrenching silence. It is a silence that manifested after being violated by her family's, quote, patriarch, unquote, a man she was raised to trust, love, respect, and honor. This book speaks to the heart of any individual who has experienced this level of betrayal and remained silent. It explores how, quote, silence, unquote, can manifest in ways that perpetuate a cycle of abuse, leaving its victims betrayed, broken, bound, and bewildered. How is that for an alliteration for you? Welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, none other than Houstonian Nicole Scott. Nicole, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Welcome to the Reading Circle microphone, all the way from the state where everything is big. They say Texas is like the center of the world. That's what they say, that when you look on the globe, that it's the center of the world.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if
it's mighty big.
It so sure is.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, I was down. Now, I've been to Texas a few times, different cities. I did my basic training in the Air Force in San Antonio. And like I was sharing with you before we went on air, my aunt lives in Houston. I've been to Dallas on business. And when you get out there on the highway, you'll be like, say, in Houston, and you'll see a sign for Dallas, and you think Dallas is around the corner, and it's 4 or 5 hours away.
Yes.
And that's within the same state.
And you can drive an hour in Houston and still be in Houston. So, it's a really huge metropolitan city.
So wait a minute, you can drive an hour and still be in the same city?
Right. If you go from one end far north and drive all the way south, you might pass different little cities in between. You have, all those different places like Bel Air or Humble Spring, all of that. But it's all metropolitan, Houston metropolitan area. And one end to the other is a good little drive. I did it yesterday.
Wow, within one city. That is amazing. Now, as I said, I'm reading your bio, and we have a lot in common in terms of interests and educational background. I see your BA from University of Houston and M.Ed from Lamar. Now, I have the BA and I have the M.Ed as well, and I'm an educator also. When I'm not on the air on Saturday mornings, I'm educated throughout the week. I'm an educator for life, but throughout the week, that's my daytime job, if you will, is being an educator, and while I do this on weekends. So talk to me a little bit about, because I saw, that was the other thing I saw, that you did a certain amount of years in corporate, and then it looks like you switched to education. I did the same thing. I did 15 years in corporate, and then I've been in education for the last almost 20. Talk to me a little bit about what was going on there.
Well, when I initially graduated from college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I just started getting little jobs, and I landed a job at a very large medical school in Houston, and just got promoted and had positions of progressive responsibility. And then my boss transitioned to one of the NASA contractors and kind of facilitated my transition as well. And so I worked there, and I worked on an international project. And actually, at the ripe age of 39, I discovered while on a trip to Russia that I was pregnant. And when I returned home, I decided, I no longer wanted to have all that international travel and the stress of that type of environment. And I took a break, had my son, and then transitioned into education. I worked in education 11 years, and I recently walked away from it. But I worked at the elementary level, and I also taught several years at one of the community colleges in the area. And I just decided, it was time for me to walk away from that and do some of the things that I love and I'm passionate about from my home.
I know that. See, again, very, very similar, because I cut over from corporate. I was with, a matter of fact, AT&T is headquartered now in Dallas, but at the time, AT&T was headquartered up here in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. And I was with them for 15 years. And then, let me see, I was about 38 whenever I left to come into education as well at that time. So very similar. And the traveling, when I was with corporate, I mean, the perks were great. I mean, when I tell like the international travel you were just talking about, the travel, the meeting famous people, because I was in marketing. I was in their marketing department, wrote telemarketing script, worked with our agents and ad agency, so forth. But it just wasn't doing it for me. My heart was always, even as a child, in education. So after 15 years of that, I know what you mean. I was kind of like, you know what? Mine wasn't due to a child, but it was just inside of me. Like, I want to do education, and that's where I've been. So I can totally relate to that. And then when you say you kind of left to do what you really wanted to do, was the writing of the book a part of that, or had you done the writing of the book prior to leaving education?
Oh, I actually started writing the book 25 years ago, but was hoping for a happy ending, and I just kind of put it on the shelf. And then when I ended my second marriage, I decided it was time for me to go ahead and complete it and publish. But it was a work in progress for many, many years. I just started taking notes, and the book was really done. It took me about a week to put it together once I left my job.
So it was like,
and had a clear head.
Right. Over time, over the years, you were kind of like in your mind, or either jotting down notes, putting it together. And then once you had the time, you were able to really put it together, if you will.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Now you came out, and I had to laugh as I looked at it, and I was reading the Frog Chronicles. Whenever I was reading the part about going through so many princes, I had to smile, I had to laugh. Where did that, the Frog Prince thing, we kind of know the childhood fairy tale story. How'd you come up with the idea?
It's just that over time, once I reflected on everything I had been through and what happened that actually influenced that path or direction that I went in, I just started thinking about this metaphorical frog that, all women hope to meet that will turn into a prince. And it's kind of like the biblical Boaz, but you just keep kissing these frogs and hoping that one day you can close your eyes and open them, and that'll be your prince, and that'll be your happily ever after. And I just thought, that was my life. So no better way to paint it than to put forth that metaphorical frog and say, this is what happened. But the more important thing about it is the message in the book is what happened to me that altered the trajectory of my life and had me on that path with the frogs, one after the other. And so there's a thing about, it's interesting. The title's interesting, and it reflects my life. But I wanted people to gather the whole story so they could better understand how people end up in that place.
Right. And see, a lot of times when we go through things, it doesn't make sense to us. Or it seems like life is not fair, and a whole lot of whatever we say whenever we're going through things we don't want to go through. But the truth of the matter is sometimes we go through things in order to be able to help someone else. And I'm getting a feel from it. Sounds like that may have been your experience, even though we don't know that at the time we're going through it. But then when you do something like write a book, or you share your story with folks, and folks get an opportunity to hear that they're not the only one in the world that this has happened to, it changes their life as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, it serves as a cautionary tale maybe to some of the youth that may pick it up and read it, or to parents who may discuss it with their youth. But there are always people that can relate to your story that at some point felt those same emotions, the same gamut of emotions. And so they can kind of travel on the journey with you and see you on the other side of the journey. And that is what I'm most hopeful for, that it will inspire the dialogue, the therapy, the things that are needed to promote the healing process.
Absolutely, because I'm looking here again in the description of the Frog Chronicles, and it says, Nicole takes you on a very transparent journey through the darkness of her past that stemmed from years of gut-wrenching silence. It is the silence that manifested after being violated by her family's patriarch, a man she was raised to trust, love, respect, and honor. Now, okay, there's a couple of ways we can handle this. I don't know if you want to tell it or if that's part of the book. That's the whole draw of the book. Or do you want to touch on, okay, what brought this about? Because you're talking about an issue here that is a very prevalent issue. And again, unless you tell me, I have my suspicions, but I've had so many guests over my years since 2001 who were violated, and a lot of times they had no problem sharing it on the air, and I would just be sitting here like blown away. So
yeah, I don't have a problem sharing it because I wrote the book, and the book is on the World Wide Web, so I don't have any problem sharing it. Just to give you a little information, of course, the number of people, male and female, who have experienced some form of sexual trauma is just staggering.
Right.
But in the wake of a lot of recent media reports regarding sexual assault allegations, a lot of people began to question why victims remain silent for so long. And I just recall in the last year and a half becoming annoyed by the heightened skepticism aimed at sexual assault survivors, and angered when people question why they wait to speak out. And then I just started feeling outraged at society's tendency to vilify sexual assault survivors with questions like, what were you wearing?
Right.
How many drinks did you have? Were you dancing suggestively?
Right.
So that's what really frustrated me, and then it motivated me to answer some of those questions from my unique perspective. And I can say, admittedly, there are a myriad of reasons that people wait or they don't talk about it, but most are related to shame and self-blame. So the Frog Chronicles is my story. It's the story that tells how, the aftermath of my sustained silence altered the trajectory of my life. And it is also a story about my personal transformation from self-loathing to self-love.
Right.
So, yes, I was violated at the age of 8 by my great-grandfather. And so if you can imagine the age gap, that was a big deal. And at the time, I bought into everything he told me.
Of course. And
my adult life, I had this self-fulfilling prophecy that, the things that he said about me were true. And, he got in my psyche. And, you have this psychological warfare going on, and nobody's ever going to love me. I'm damaged goods. Nobody's ever going to believe me if I tell because I'm just a child. And then when you reflect on these things and you see how it impacts your life, and then you finally talk about it and you discover that this happened to at least 5 other people in the family, it just makes you know, oh, no. This is truly the aftermath of sustained silence.
Right.
We must start talking about this. We must tell someone. We cannot take on any of the blame because at no point in no way is this our fault.
Absolutely. And see, this is the thing. No matter how many times, because as I said, I've had guests on the air that was molested by their grandfathers, fathers, uncles, cousins. And no matter how many times when I get a different guest on and they share his or her story, I still sit here like mouth open, dropped open. And it is just because back what you're saying in terms of the reason you were able to listen to what your great-grandfather was, because like you said, he was a person you trust. That's my great-grandfather. I'm 8. What else are you supposed to believe other than what the elder person or the adults say, especially when we're constantly telling kids that whatever an adult tells you to do, you make sure you do. We're not going to do anything to hurt you, so forth and so on. I'm saying that because that's what we say at school. But why would you think any differently at 8 other than when someone who is in your family, who is your relative, why would you think any different based on what they're telling you? I mean, and that's just shame on the adult. Now, that could have been sickness on his part, but in the event, in any event, it still impacted the rest of your days from 8 on.
Right. And so you're sitting back and you're looking at everybody holding this person in such high regard.
Right.
And in your mind, you're thinking all these different things. You're thinking maybe they all know. Maybe this is a rite of passage. Maybe I deserve this. You're thinking all of these things in your little 8-year-old mind. And so when you grow up and you look back, of course, you know, hindsight is 20/20.
Right.
But the negative ramifications of all of those things are some of the things I wanted the readers to understand and to be able to say, okay, I see myself in that. And, you know, I get that. You know, people who experience these types of things have negative ramifications. They, you know, self-esteem is impacted.
Right.
A lot of times they engage in unhealthy relationships, self-destructive habits, trust issues. Even
Right.
I've learned through a lot of therapy an inability to resolve conflict effectively. So as I matured and as I got more and more therapy and was able to be more introspective, I learned the importance of resolving conflict effectively, of confronting people when you feel like you're wronged in a way that's healthy, but not accepting things and speaking up for yourself and understanding that your opinion matters, that only you are in control of the manner in which you conduct yourself, and that you can't allow anyone else to influence you in a way that compromises your integrity or undermines your confidence or, you know, is an attack or anything like that. That took many years for me to develop. I'm hopeful that the readers can get there a lot faster than I did. But, yeah, I think that it's so hard when it's someone that you're supposed to love, somebody that you're taught to trust, you know, those types of things.
But that's why in many of these instances, the person can get away with it because it is that relationship. Now, that's not to say that things don't happen with strangers, but within the family unit, it's supposed to have that trust. They're not supposed to be doing things like that, and that's why they can get away with it. Now, I am a firm believer in God. I'm a firm believer in the universe. I'm a firm believer in the law of attraction. I'm a firm believer in how there is something bigger than us. And let me tell you where I'm going with that. Nicole, I don't know if you were listening to the show prior to us going on the air. Sometimes guests do that and sometimes they don't. But if you were, at 6 o'clock, whenever I kick off, I always open the show off reading from 2 books. One is by Iyanla Vanzant, the other is by Joyce Meyer. And they're perpetual devotionals, meaning they have a date, but they have no year associated with them. So whatever reading comes up for the day, on the day that I'm on the air, that's what I read. So out of Iyanla's book today, April the 20th, she says, I am willing to acknowledge a little girl needs a father to help her grow into a woman. I'm not going to read the whole thing again because I read it at 6, but there's a piece in here that got into what you were just talking about. They need a daddy to tell them they are pretty, to demonstrate that they are valuable, to teach them that they are worthy, and to acknowledge that they deserve respect. Little girls need a daddy to teach them what to expect from men. Now, we just scheduled this interview. I had no idea that was going to come up today out of the book until today. That's what I'm saying. There's something larger than me and you, because this fit right into what we're talking about. And when you have those trust relationships, as, again, an 8-year-old would, they're not expecting things like that to happen. And for somebody to be telling the exact opposite of what I was just talking about, Iyanla says the father figure should be telling them. And you were just saying you were fed a bunch of lies at 8 that stayed with you as you grew older.
Yes. And even, I do believe that things come together for the good. I believe in alignment as well. And as you spoke that from Ms. Van Zant's book, I immediately turned to a page in my book in chapter 20, which is titled The Lesson, that also says, I feel strongly that fathers should be the first men to date their daughters.
Right.
It is important that they are told they are special, intelligent, beautiful, and talented. This will instill positive self-images early on and will plant seeds of confidence for the duration of their lives.
And see, I like that word you used, alignment. Right on point. That's the word I was looking for that was on the tip of my tongue that didn't come out, and you got it. Alignment. And I'm glad you read, because I usually ask my guests, do they have his or her book near them so that they can read something, an excerpt or passage from it, so that the audience can hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So I'm glad you did, and you're absolutely right. So for those of you in the listening audience, my guest this morning is Nicole Scott, and her book is The Frog Chronicles, The Aftermath of Sustained Silence. And the issue that we're talking about this morning is a very serious, when I say very serious issue, because it is widespread and prevalent. And a lot of folks really don't know about it, exactly what Nicole is talking about, because of silence. And folks are silent for a lot of reasons. Hence, case in point, look what happened with this nonsense with our president. I believe every last one of them women that came forth. To some respects, even with Bill Cosby and with R. Kelly, same difference. Folks are being silent because, as Nicole said, shame, embarrassment, self-esteem. And like you said, you get all these crazy questions. Now, this is what I tell folks all the time, and it may sound odd, but Nicole, I don't care if you walk down the street stark naked. That still don't give anybody the right.
Exactly. Stark naked in stilettos.
Yes.
No.
It does not give anybody the right. I don't care what you have on or don't have on. It doesn't give anybody the right to violate you. So for the fact... Go ahead.
It's scary to me that in 2019, people are still asking those questions.
Yes, they do.
Of course, we live in this male-dominated society, but there's just such a high level of skepticism, and then, this misogynistic mindset, like she asked for it. No, she didn't.
Right. Again, and I'm going to emphasize the point. No one has the right to take another's body, spirit, or soul. I don't care what they have on or don't have on. That is not an excuse. That is not a reason. And if you listen to Nicole's story, this happened to her when she was 8. So now we're talking about a child. It's crazed enough if it were a grown woman, but we're talking about a child. And again, as principal of a school, Nicole, anytime a sex offender moves into my area, the prosecutor's office sends me a letter with their picture on it, letting me know that a sex offender has moved into the area, so I can let parents know or what have you if I so choose to, or at least keep my eye out. Is this person lurking around the building? But the issue that we're talking about, listening audience, is serious. Now, if you look at Nicole's book, and we were just talking this before we went on the air, I love her cover, and you all know I rate covers. And Nicole's is up there near the top in terms of the color, in terms of the pop. And one of the main things with anytime when you do music or if you do books or anything like that, you want to be sure that you attract, because that's the first step, is being able to attract somebody to your product. If you walk into a bookstore and this book is on the shelf, I guarantee you got to go to it. Them big red lips on the contrast with the green and the frog and the crown on, you cannot miss that. So the title of the book is The Frog Chronicles, but the issue is serious because there are a lot of kids. Sometimes, Nicole, I look at some of my kids in my building, and what comes to my mind is something's going on there. Well, I mean, as an 8-year-old, I mean, I know this is probably taking you back, but how did it impact your being able to function in school or with your classmates or other family members?
It's so interesting. If you get the book and you look at the chapters, they're all short chapters. I designed it to be a quick read, and one of the chapters is the overachiever. So because that happened to me, and because I already felt less than, I was an overachiever. I was social. I wasn't introverted at all. And I was an outstanding student. My mom was really intent on having children that could articulate, that could talk about worldviews and different things and politics. So, we always spoke. That dialogue was always open. So I was a really, really good student. I participated in a lot of different activities, sports, extemporaneous speaking, etc. And it didn't impact me that way, but the real impact was that I was an overachiever because I wanted to disprove what my molester had said about me.
Wow.
So that was my way of disproving it. And so when you read the book and you read the chapters, they're mostly in chronological order, you'll understand, okay, when I say it altered the trajectory of my life, every aspect of my life was impacted by this.
See, in terms of, at least though, for you, because it could have gone so many different ways, but I'm hearing with you, at least you burned that energy or you focused on bettering yourself. For some people, it would have taken them just the opposite direction.
Right. Well, it took me in that good direction academically and intellectually, but in terms of relationships, sexually, emotionally, I went the other way. So luckily for me, I didn't just sink in the quicksand and not have any ability to become a productive member of society. But trust me, it impacted me in many negative ways as well. That just was not one of them.
I can't even say I imagine. I can't, because that is not an experience I've had or had an experience in the immediate household. But in terms of, like you were just saying, for some people, experiences like that make them extremely promiscuous. For others, it makes them frigid. I mean, it has so many ways of manifesting itself that now, like you said, impacts relationships. So for the princes or the men that you meet, they may or may not be aware of that experience going on. Or do you make them aware? Or, I mean, what kind of, like, when you say it impacts relationships, talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, promiscuity is relative. So the majority of my sexual relationships occurred when I was in my 20s, and I'm 53 now. So there's a little part of you learn better, you do better in it.
Right.
But my mentality and my approach toward men, it's like once I became sexually active, once there was consensual sex involved, right, I called all the shots. So I didn't see it as promiscuity at the time.
Well, when I say that,
of course, I know.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me define what I'm saying, and maybe I should have said it another way. For some, it turns them into sex addicts. It turns into like an addiction. So that's what I'm not talking about. Just, right, okay, I'm with this boyfriend, and then next year, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about for some, it turns them into just like a drug addict, a sex addict.
Okay, well, so for me, going to therapy, once I had the reveal, I didn't say anything for a long time, and I'll go back to that in a second. Let me just make this point. So once I decided what I was going to do, I knew I was going to have control. So it made me be more in control of my sex life. A lot of people who are survivors are frigid, but I actually didn't have an issue with the sex. I just wanted to be in control of it. I wanted to make sure I was making the decisions that even if they were bad decisions, that there was no coercion or anything like that. So that's kind of what I learned in therapy, how it impacted me. No, I never got to either extreme of, frigidity or sex addiction, because the perspective was there. But I don't know that the perspective would have been there, Mark, had I not received therapy.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you did, if that's the case, because like I said, I mean, when someone is violated like this, it manifests in so many different areas. And a lot of time for the people that you meet, because like going back to what you're talking about with the silence, they have no idea why a person may be acting the way he or she is acting, not knowing that background. And that's not even just in relationships, like in boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. That's just in how you operate with people in general. People may not understand why a person is angry, or why a person is down, or why a person looks that way or acts that way or responds that way. Have no clue that it went back to something that happened at 8 years old.
Exactly. And I can tell you a story about that. So when it happened to me, of course, I didn't say anything for a really long time. I actually didn't really talk about it until he was dead. And so in a sick, twisted way, I was protecting him. I felt very strongly with my family unit, wonderful, large, typical Creole, close-knit family, overprotected. Everybody's oblivious to what's going on, and I felt like had I told someone, that would have had a terrible outcome, right, for him. And so in this weird way, I was protecting him. That was another discovery in therapy. So when it happened, when he first got really, really ill, and I knew he would probably die soon, I remembered this really strange feeling where I was happy. And I sat down when my mom called me. I sat down really quick, and I wrote this poem in like 2 minutes. And I wanted to share that with you in hopes that maybe people can understand the mix of emotions that you feel when something like that happens to you, so that they maybe can recalibrate their mentality toward this type of thing and transition from being really judgmental about people and things they do in their lives to being more empathetic as a society. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share.
I don't mind at all. If you have it near you, read away.
Okay, it's really quick. The title is The Devastation of Molestation. It was written around 1985. I heard that you were dying. There was no crying, only relying on God to make you suffer. A chance to see your agony was joy to me. I had to see you suffer. Now you're not here to give that sneer and make me fear that I will have to suffer. I'm somewhat free, but parts of me will never be, because you made me suffer.
Wow, and I know with poetry, we do the finger snaps, not claps. So I'm here in the studio, I'm doing the finger snaps.
Thank you.
If you were doing that in a poetry club or what do they call spoken word club, they would give you the snaps.
Snapping.
That's right. But
Yeah.
I mean, I love the title, first off. And again, you never know who a poem like that may help, because I guess that would lead to my next question, because as I said, it's very conversational, and my questions kind of generate from responses. So do you ever get to the point where you forgive? I mean, I don't think there's any such thing as forgetting, but do you get a chance to, or do you find a way through therapy or through whatever to actually forgive? Or is there such a thing?
Yes, there is, and I'm happy to say that. So, there was one specific year when I was concluding my therapy that I declared my season for forgiveness, and I asked him to help me with the goal. And now I'm just amazed at my capacity to forgive people and to ask for forgiveness. It just has such a cathartic effect on my life. And yes, forgiveness is possible. No, you may not forget it, and you may, carry some of it with you, but you have to open that baggage, start unpacking it so that you can live. Right. And forgiveness made me feel really invigorated. It was so liberating because I unpacked that baggage and I put it away. So now I don't carry it with me. And I know a lot of people, I tease some of my close people around me about carrying grudges and how it weighs you down.
Right.
So absolutely learn to forgive. Learn to put things where they belong so that you can live your best life.
No, and that's interesting that too many people, I won't say a lot of people do know, but people really don't understand that forgiveness is really not about the other person. Forgiveness really is for you. And like just what you described, because this is what happens a lot of times. And if a person's dead, it really, but let's say, for example, someone who's still alive has done something and you refuse to forgive. You're carrying that baggage around, not forgiving. That other person going on about their business could care less about you. And you're sitting there scuffling and struggling with whatever it is, and they're going on about their business. But however, when you forgive, that releases you. And so if they're still going about their business doing their thing, well, that's on them. But you're not carrying that baggage anymore, as you just described.
It's such an injurious burden to carry.
Right.
Rage and resentment and hostility. It impacts you psychologically, emotionally, physically, you're all these different ways, physiological ways that stress and anger and rage adversely impact your body and your psyche. It's just not worth it.
It's not. And that right there, it's not worth it. And that's a hard sell for people, because they honestly believe by them being angry and holding on and holding grudges, they actually think that's really doing something, not realizing it is doing something. It's tearing their body down. It's tearing their spirit down. It's tearing their psyche down. It is doing something, but not what they think. Mm-mm. And so that is a very important point in terms of, be very clear, audience. no one ever forgets anything like that. But what happens is, it's just like if you get a wound or a cut, where over time it may scar, and you'll always see that little scar, but it doesn't hurt the same way it did when it first happened. So you don't forget. I mean, I have a scratch on me from whenever I was, funny enough, 9 years old, somewhere around there. I got scratched by a cat, and that scratch is still, I'm sitting here looking at it as I talk about it, and it's still on my left, on the inside of my forearm, and I'm looking at it, but it does not hurt. Now, it hurt at that time when it scratched, but it does not hurt now as I look at it, but the scar is there. So
right, and so you think about that. You leave that wound open.
Right.
It's going to get infected.
Right.
You keep it open, it's going to get infected. It's going to fester.
Absolutely
so you allow
right.
it to close, and you allow it to, heal completely so that you can move on for it. Every now and then you glance at it. Okay, it's just a reminder. Oh, yeah, that's when this happened.
Right.
But it's not able to become infectious and take over.
Right. And I'm sitting here because I'm on your website, and I'm down on your bio page where your photo is. And when I tell you that photo is, I mean, I feel like I'm looking at you dead in your eye. I mean, that you look like you're making eye contact from your photo in the bio on your website. I mean, feel like I know you just from look like we're looking dead. And very attractive photo. And you're a couple years younger than me. I kind of figured it out when you said 39 and 12, so forth, and then when you said your age. But very attractive photo. And interestingly enough, not to say that it doesn't happen to anybody, but a lot of times very attractive people have suffered a lot of different things that you would never know just based on physical looks. Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, you're gorgeous. Oh, you're beautiful. You have no, like the song I was playing before we came on. I'm glad I don't look like what I've been through. I mean, you would never know looking at that photo, your story. If you pull up your bio, go to that gorgeous picture there, you would never know until he read your book.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful eyes and smile.
I think that people, I'm happy now. That was a process. The picture was a very happy time in my life, to be honest with you. And it shows through in the picture, and that's why I selected it.
Okay.
But I think that what people get twisted about is that they think that a lot of people who walk around smiling all the time are happy, and they've never been through anything.
Right.
You smile through that. You smile through your pain. You smile through the things you've been through, because you can't really get on the other side holding on to it. It's the same thing that we talked about with forgiveness. You have to smile through some things.
That's absolutely
right.
And
you have to know, you can't feel like you're moving forward if you're holding on to it. It changes your face. It drags your face down when you can't smile. Just little simple things.
Yes.
You kind of push through. But I do thank you for noticing the picture and for the compliment. Thank you so much.
No, when I first pulled it off, whew, and very nice photo. But you are so right in terms of you have to, and I try to get this message across to close family members, that you have to smile and press your way through, because, and at the same time, folks who see you smiling have no idea of what you've gone through or going through. But you don't want to be moping around in the pity party, because that's heavy too. That's some heavy lifting there. We were talking about the grudge thing a couple of minutes, and I tell people all the time, do you understand how much energy it is not to speak to somebody? If there's somebody like you're like, I'll never speak to him again. I'll never speak to her again. And now you come across each other, like each other's path. Do you know how much energy it takes to have to not speak, as opposed to just saying, hey, how you doing, and keep rolling? I mean, you literally have to
put it on them. You put it on them. Then you're like, hey, good morning, have a great day.
Right. Because, you literally have to try to turn away from, try to go another path, try to look another way, you have to it takes a lot of energy to not speak to somebody. And as opposed to, like I said, all right, you came, like you just said, good morning, and keep walking. They don't say nothing back. That's on them. You did what you were supposed to do. But it's the same thing with that grudge holding. It's the same thing with the forgiveness. And now, listening audience, let us be clear. Let me and Nicole be clear. Nobody's telling you it's going to be easy. Nobody's saying,
absolutely not.
Right. We ain't talking pie in the sky. We ain't talking Pollyanna. We ain't talking pink rose-colored glasses. We ain't talking none of that because it is going to be difficult. Ain't nobody telling you it's not going to be hard. But you know what? At the end of the day, and I think that's the upshot of The Prince or the Frog Chronicles, I think that's the upshot of it. At the end of the day, you are going to be the stronger and better person. I heard you say something about the talking piece was cathartic. Was the writing piece, even though over the years you were gathering your information, was it putting it all together cathartic for you as well?
Yeah, when I first started writing, and I've been doing ghostwriting since I was 19. So
okay.
I started writing at 8 or 9 as a therapeutic outlet. I started off journaling, and then I, graduated to a little poetry and a short story or whatever. I never published, but it was a therapeutic outlet. It was a way for me to put my thoughts somewhere since I wasn't ready to put them out to the universe. So absolutely, it was a therapeutic outlet. And I think it prepared me for when I did seek therapy to be able to just almost like vomit it out, for lack of a better word. It just all came out. I just opened my mouth and just, he just had to sit there and look at me for like 15 minutes. But that's what it felt like.
Right.
And I don't want to sugarcoat that because I want people to understand that once they do that and they just spit it all out and just get it out there, then it's like a weight is off them. I was telling another lady, all those years, even though on paper, excellent student and this and that and active and popular and this and that, you know how they say chip on the shoulder? I felt like I had a boulder on my shoulder because I was carrying so much weight. So when I started therapy, that's literally what it felt like. I told my mom, I just felt like I threw up on his desk. And it was just all out of me. And I left like almost bouncing on my toes. I felt
I know that's
lighter.
I'm reading. I know that's right. I'm reading some of the commentary on terms of the book. It said, a must-read, ladies. Less than 3 hours ago, I began reading my friend Nicole Scott's book. From the first page to the last, her awe-inspiring story is the epitome of captivating truth and uncompromising transparency. Nicole's vivid accounts, exquisite word choice, and emotionally charged narrations engaged my mind and kept me flipping pages nonstop as she skillfully carried me along her journey to freedom. And that was Ms. Jack J. Green. Have you ever had anybody who's read your book come up to you and say, "Oh my God, you were talking about me"?
Yes, I have. I've had a couple of people who got on the webpage just to read about it, because initially with the pre-sales, that's how they were purchasing them.
Right.
And they sent me an email, and they said, I'm so-and-so, and someone told me about it. I would like to know if you will talk to me. I would love to meet you because I experienced something similar, and I got your book, and there were a couple of things in there where I just had to put the book down, and it was the same exact thing. Can we talk about it?
Wow.
I say absolutely, and, just give them my number, give me a call. So I've had 4 such conversations so far where people had a lot of parallels in terms of experiences and how it made them feel, frog experiences particularly, Mark, where they had a frog that impacted them the same way, and they just couldn't believe that I referred to them as frogs. They understood why. Because, I've actually had some of my metaphorical frogs buy the book.
Right.
and been able to talk to them about it.
Right.
And they've been very positive and supportive in the manner in which I presented it. I didn't male bash. I don't really believe in male bashing. I just told my story. And if you look at the story and you're a father or uncle or aunt or someone and you look at the story, it gives you a heightened awareness.
Right.
The goal was to propel the conversation and the dialogue in a way that inspires and promotes healing.
Right.
And so I had to do that through transparent storytelling. And there's some shock value in the book. But hopefully, it gets the message out that was intended. And that's just that we need to be more aware of what's going on in our society and start doing things individually to change how we respond to these things and to be of help.
No, that's absolutely
right.
right.
The solution and not a part of the problem.
You're absolutely right. Did you ever have, and again, I'm going back to a couple of the commentary. The first one, congratulations, Nicole Scott. I admire your courage, applaud your transparency, and support your vision for a better tomorrow. I pray the Frog Chronicles helps millions who have kept silent. That's Andrea King. And then Dana Cormier Slack, she said, I had a chance to read this book over the holidays. A tragic story ending with life lessons of self-love and self-worth for the broken little girls and so many women. Did you have anybody who read your book, knew you were the author, didn't know you had gone through that, and now they've read it and started looking at you cross-eyed?
Yes and no, because I'm a very transparent person in general.
Okay.
So most people who are close in my circle know what happened, but outsiders who bought the book that didn't know, it gave them perspective on why I'm the way I am. You know how some people you can say, oh, she's aggressive, but I'm really assertive.
Right.
But they say I'm aggressive. Or a person who is demonstrative, and, you know, they give it that negative connotation.
Right.
Well, reading the book, they were like, now I understand you. I had one person in particular who came to me and apologized to me for the way she thought about me, and she wrote a very good review about the book. And she was someone from the workplace who I didn't necessarily always have the best communication with, but her review in particular touched me in a way that made me you just get, okay, so people can get it. People can understand that, yeah, there's a reason. You are the sum total of your life experiences.
Right.
And sometimes when you judge people,
right,
you don't really know.
No, that's absolutely right. And that's one of the, I don't know if beauties is the word that I'm looking for, but for lack of a better term at the moment, one of the beauties about a book like yours, and I think one of your reviewers hit it, in terms of being able, and we talked about it a couple minutes ago, in terms of being able to help somebody else. Because this is the trick of, as we call it, the enemy or Satan or whatever you want to, however you want to phrase it, whatever you want to call it. This is the trick. Many people will experience whatever they experience and feel like no one else on the planet has gone through that experience. And then they'll come across a book like yours, and that will give them hope. An interview,
yes,
your book, somebody listening to this right now, someone that saw you on your interview that you did in Princeton, so forth, will say, wait a minute, that happened. And then if they go to your website and look at your picture and they say, well, if that happened to her and she can look like that, then I can make it. That's the what I was saying earlier in terms of sometimes we go through things and we don't understand why we went through them. But then at the end of the day, we've now helped, as someone said, millions who have kept silent.
Yes. You know, and I was thinking when you asked me the question, I was trying to find this actual review, and I want to read it to you. I'm going to try to go really quickly.
No, we have time. Go ahead. Take your time. Don't rush.
We're connected in our thought processes. I recently finished reading this book, and I wanted to give a shout-out to the author, Nicole Scott. There are very few people that could or would be willing to bear themselves the way that she did in this book. It's hard to look at our own dark corners, and another thing entirely, to shed light on our dark corners by putting them on display for others. I commend her courage, transparency, and resiliency. It just further proves that we need to treat each other with respect and kindness. You never know what others have faced and lived through. You only ever see the face they present to the world. Here's to hoping you find your prince, but knowing you're a queen in your own right.
Wow, that is nice. And it
sounds
like it's
really nice
on
from the
point.
Perspective that it opened her eyes,
right, from
how she initially perceived me to like, oh, that's why she's that way. That's why she's, you know, confident and articulate and self-assured and, you know, says what she means and means what she says.
Right.
It came off another way to them until they understood this was a work in progress.
Right.
I had to fight for myself, advocate for myself after being violated in such a manner. And that took time.
And again, listening audience, if you've never been violated in any type of way, be grateful and appreciative. But if you've ever been violated, that is one of the most, I can't even put into words, feeling. If you've ever had your house broken into, or if you've ever had something stolen from you, or as we're talking about here with Nicole, if you've ever had your body taken from you, if you've ever had your spirit, I cannot put into words what being violated. And I know what it feels like to be violated because I've been violated in terms of someone going into something they had no business going into, which was my journal. I've had my cell phone stolen. I've had, as a kid, house broken into. So I know what that indescribable feeling is when someone has now taken something over your control, beyond your control, that was yours. And so to her, in terms of Nicole being transparent about it, you don't know how many people that she's helping. And as I said earlier, I mean, her book is a redemptive message. That's what that's called, a redemptive message. That even though it started out bad, it wound up good. For as good can get, considering the situation. And
right, and the goal is that it would serve someone else.
Right.
It would shorten their recovery time, shorten their healing process.
That's right.
It's the whole purpose for the transparency. Hey, get there a lot quicker than I did, please.
Right. And see, and people can appreciate transparency. They really can. And transparency really is, because people will look, again, they'll see the smile and say, oh, everything's going great for her. She ought to smile. Hey, if I look like that, I'd be smiling too. I mean, there's all kinds of things. But once you get transparency, no, hon, you need to understand. This is what is along with this package. And that gives people the appreciation, like I said, and the hope. Because see, again, this topic is, oh my God, it is so serious only because we had a situation with the president where we had him on tape prior to him being elected. I thought that was going to throw things off when he's literally talking about where he could grab women because he was famous. Right. And people poo-pooed that. They looked at that and like, okay, yeah, well, no big deal, and roll right on as if nothing. And that's where we are, back to Nicole's point. And she's talking about something that went on years ago, and it's always been going on. I think it's just more exposed now with everything we have with social media and so forth and so on. People willing to talk. We have the women with the, what is it, Me Too? Is that movement?
Yeah, the Me Too movement.
The Me Too movement. So
yes.
You have women now more willing to say, you know what? I am not keeping quiet any longer. I am going to step up and speak out. We're going to stop this nonsense. And see, this is why it's nonsense to me. I grew up, it was just me and my sister. So it was me and a girl. Whenever my first marriage, I had 2 daughters. And in my second marriage, she had 2 daughters that became my stepdaughter. So I've always been around girls. And I can't imagine anybody doing that to girls or boys for that matter, in terms of just violating them, and then a family member. And then even if it's not a family member, to me, that's just something that's just very aberrant, just way off. Whenever I look at the R. Kellys and the Bill Cosbys and the Trumps for that matter, if you got that kind of money, I don't care what you look like. You ain't got to be taking nobody. They're going to be there.
It's pervasive because it's a power move.
Yes.
It's not a sex act.
Yes.
It's a power and control move. So
yes.
It's pervasive through society because of that. So when the president of the United States can talk about it and glorify it and be elected and, be able to do all of these things, then that perpetuates the myth that it's okay. So it further promotes it. And so you have to be vocal about it. You have to do the things that are necessary to get the word out. No, it's not okay. And I'm hopeful that my book will serve as a platform so that other people can just start talking about it and say, no. We have to shift from the victim mindset to the survivor mindset, discard the guilt and shame, and talk about this so people can understand this is not okay. And as you indicated, boys and girls. It's happening to boys and girls. Let's not forget that boys are being molested at alarming rates as well.
Oh, yes, they are.
And make sure that we're talking to all of our babies.
No, absolutely right. Again, these just...
what's okay and what's not okay. What's inappropriate and what is. What consent means.
Right.
Even if you have to give scenarios to help them. I said that in my book. get that dialogue going. This is what consent means.
Right. And see, again, like you're talking about the boys. I mean, we started hearing more stories about coaches and priests and everything with the boys.
Woo!
Like, what on?
Yes.
Right. So it goes either way. It's wrong. That's the bottom line. It's wrong. And like you just said, it really
is the bottom line.
It's not necessarily the sex thing. It's more of the power and the control thing. And that's a sickness in and of itself. I mean, if you want to control anything, control yourself. You don't try to control somebody else. Control yourself. But it really is, whenever, as you said, you can get somebody on tape saying, when you're famous, you can just grab them by the, and everybody just kind of, okay, well, yeah, he's right. Oh, well, and move right on as if, like, what? That should have been a major revolt. Major. That should have been like, that should have been enough.
Talk about flabbergasted.
Right.
It's just indicative of where we are as a society. When something like that is acceptable, okay, and we're going to elevate him to the highest position that this nation has, something is wrong with us. And until we're able to look in the mirror and recognize, am I part of the problem or part of the solution? This is going to continue.
Right.
But people have to speak out against those things, and the fact that they didn't is disheartening for me.
No, it was amazing because, again, personally, I really didn't necessarily care one way or the other who won, whether it was the Democrat or Republican, Hillary or Trump. I didn't expect Trump to win out of the 20-some people that were on the Republican ticket. I didn't expect him to come out as the front runner. But at the same time, all right, whoever won. But once something like that came out, and it was clearly
politics aside.
Right. Politics aside. Bingo. It was his voice. It was him. And not for nothing, the other guy, what's his name? Billy or Bobby, whatever the heck his name was, he wound up losing his job. But in the interim now, this one got elevated to, as you said, the highest office in the land. And that incident wasn't the only one with him. They were the women that were in the Miss America pageant that came forth and says, yeah, he would come backstage and do this. But yet none of that was enough to say, you know what, that's not who we need leading us. Now, again, like you said, politics aside, if it was the reverse, I'd have still been saying the same thing. If they had came out with a tape of Hillary saying something like that about grabbing boys or girls, I'd have felt the same way. If it would have been about Obama, I'd have felt the same way. So like you said, politics aside.
Same rules apply.
Yes.
Same rules apply. This is aberrant behavior, period.
Right.
Black, white, green, orange, purple, male, female, Democrat, Republican, whatever. It's wrong.
Right.
And until we get that going and make sure that everybody buys into that, then, we won't be able to move forward past this, and we won't get to a place to where we handle it effectively. When the people say boys will be boys, and they joke around and that's locker room talk and stuff like that. No, that's messaging.
Right.
You're planting a seed in another person, and normally younger people that are very easily influenced, that is acceptable behavior.
That's correct.
And so it's just moving on. It's just moving on, generation to generation.
That's correct.
At some point, we have to stop that, and we have to say, because you think about if it were my daughter or my son, these people aren't thinking like that.
Correct. I mean, that's the schizophrenia we have in terms of the statement you just made, boys will be boys, but at the same time, we tell our daughters, keep your legs closed. So if boys are being boys, who are they being boys with? If the boys being boys want to have a virgin for a wife, or if the boys being boys want to have a woman that hasn't been with a bunch of other men, then who are boys being boys with? That's the schizophrenia here in terms of how we treat our boys and our girls, our sons and our daughters. Oh, go out and sow your wild oats. Well, who are they sowing them with? And
that's the double standard.
Yes.
One of the chapters in my book, The Double Standard.
I'm definitely going to download and read your book. It's on Amazon. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to give you the opportunity to promote. But is it in the Kindle version as well?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Oh, I'm definitely going to be downloading yours. I usually most of my guests, if not all of them, before it's all said and done, I wind up, especially if it's on Kindle. And if it's not, I just order it from them and they send me the paperback or the hard copy. But if it's on Kindle, before the day is out, I will have downloaded your book. and I will be reading it because I can't wait to read it just based on our conversation. But as I said a couple minutes ago, at this point in the show, and thank you so much for rising early. I know it's an hour behind you there, but the conversation is serious and it has been a very good one. And hopefully those of you in the listening audience share it. It'll be going up on my YouTube channel sometime this week. Pass it along. I can't, and again, being the father of 4 girls, having a sister and a mother, I and aunts, cousins, female cousins, just cannot fathom the topic. And yet so many guests that I've had on the air over the years have revealed on the air, and they've been transparent about them being molested and violated and so forth and so on. And I just sit there and just like, because that's just something that just never crossed my mind. Just like, I'm going to just take some other woman, just take some child. So it clearly, that's a sickness in and of itself. And so for folks in that boat, they need to get help, therapy, or whatever they need to get to be able to control themselves. But it's wider spread than one might think. And that's the whole point of Nicole's book in terms of we got to break the silence. Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. That was her deal. That was what the whole book was about. She was molested, and that's when she stopped talking.
Yes, actually. I just read the book again for the 5th time, actually. And it is such a brilliant piece of work because you could just close your eyes and imagine what she went through, and the manner in which she presented it. For those who grab the book, they have no clue.
Right.
And then you just read it and you just sitting there in awe, and you're thinking, okay, this happened then. It's been going on for
yes, it has.
years.
Yes, it has.
And so at what point do we address it in a way that deals with it
right
conclusively? Just, hey, no.
Right. That's why
some countries deal with it.
Yes, they do.
Our country doesn't. You know what I mean?
I laugh because they will start cutting limbs and stoning and taking lives and all. Okay, fine. You want to do that? We're gonna cut off your whatever. But yeah, there are countries that deal with things a little bit differently. That folks are a little bit more deterrent. They're a little bit less inclined to do it because
as a very healthy deterrent.
Right. Yeah, they'll start cutting some stuff off in some of these countries. But you're absolutely right. And that's why for me, because that stuff has been going on forever. And again, we were talking about Maya's book. She literally became like a mute. I mean, she, for X number of years, didn't talk. Now, we talk about silent. There's one thing not to talk about the situation. There's another thing not to talk at all. Maya went into like a mute status after her experience. And back to Nicole, what she's saying is we must speak up. That's why it makes it even more bizarre in 2018, 2019, 16, 17, whenever it was, that a tape can come out with a man on it saying when you're famous, you can grab them and it's still acceptable. That makes it even more bizarre because it has been going on since time and we're still trying to combat it. And it almost seems like you're not making any headway because there are still a lot of people who are not talking about it. I know for a fact some of my girls in my school, somewhere along the way, just based on their behavior, has been molested. My little second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, some of them, my population, it has to have occurred because I know the community I serve. And those girls aren't saying anything, but they acted out in terms of behavior and anger. And in some instances, like Nicole said, they may be the higher achiever. But it has occurred. I know has occurred. And we have to stop being silent. As the father of 4 girls, I couldn't imagine. Just could not imagine.
And, when you consider the statistics, at some point, 1 in 4.
Right.
1 in 4.
That's 25%.
Some level of violation during the course of their life.
Right.
1 in 4. So, yeah, we need to promote the dialogue. We need to put it out there that people need to speak much earlier. I can't live in regret for what I didn't do, but I can sure as heck learn from it and share it with others so that they don't
I know that's right.
do what I did.
I know that's right. And speaking of promotion, it is that time where I turn off my microphone. I don't say a word. You have the opportunity to share all your websites, any speaking engagements, book signings, anywhere, how folks can get in touch with you. The only thing you cannot say during this promotional moment is the cost. Folks can work that out with you when they get in touch with you. But at this point, Nicole, the mic is yours. You can shout out anybody. You can promote your website, the book, any other works you have in place, where you're going to be. The mic is yours.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I want to shout out God, and I want to thank him for the ability to be able to reach so many people. I want to thank my family and friends who've supported me from day one. The book is available on Amazon, The Frog Chronicles, The Aftermath of Sustained Silence. It's also available on Kindle. If you want to read a little bit about it before purchasing, there's more detail on my website, which is thefrogchronicles.com. If you want to reach me by email, you can reach me at thefrogchroniclesbook@gmail.com. I am simply Nicole Scott on Facebook. I am author Nicole Scott on Instagram. I look forward to hearing from you. If you have questions, thoughts, if you want to speak to me, I'm happy to talk to anyone who'd like to talk. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm eternally grateful for this opportunity. I want to thank you, Mark. It's been my pleasure. And I just want to say, reach out and get this dialogue going so we can start the healing process.
Well, again, thank you so much for rising early, because I have guests calling from all over the country. Every now and again, I'll get one from California, and they'd be 3 hours behind on there. And sometimes I'll get somebody from overseas they're actually ahead of us. But I'm always grateful to my guests that rise even earlier than I do to be a part of the show. And again, it will be on my YouTube channel in the archives. I will email the link to you, Nicole, and you can, once you get it, it's yours. You do whatever you want to do it. Chop it up, edit it, send it in its entirety, put it on your website, whatever you want to do with it, it's yours at that point. But the issue is, one of the objectives of the show is to inform, inspire, and entertain. And this morning was more about informing and inspiring than entertaining. Folks, this issue is real. It is. And it needs to be stopped. I don't care what educational level. I don't care what status you have, whether you're president of the United States or the janitor. It needs to stop, whether it's in the family, whether it's out on the street. Because a woman or a man, for that matter, if they chose to parade down Main Street, as Nicole said, butt naked in stilettos, it does not give anyone the right to take them. It needs and must stop. The silence must be broken. Like she said, the dialogues and the conversations must be had. The reporting and the telling must be had. And as you know, we just have to go for no holds barred. That's just all to it, and let the chips fall where they may. But eventually, God's going to take care of it. Trust me on that one. Eventually, more folks like Nicole are going to be transparent and speak out, and the Me Too and other movements are going to grow larger and larger. And at some point, like she said, maybe, I don't know if we're going to get to where other countries are, but it's going to be something similar, whether it be something physical in the law or whether God be doing what God does. But God does act. Now, go back into your Bible. You look at Sodom and Gomorrah and some other instances where God got tired of the nonsense and he acted. And this is one of those that you just never know. God may wind up acting on it as well. But at the end of the day, it's wrong. Lives are being impacted, boys and girls. And when it happens in young ages, they could live to be 100 and it would still be impacting them. So please get the word out there. Get the book, The Frog Chronicles, The Aftermath of Sustained Silence. The author is Nicole Scott. Nicole, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a blessed Easter, and I'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you again. Bye for now.
All right. Take care.